everyone, and welcome to this conversation on Women in Pan, part of the Better Tomorrow series. My name is Attillah Springer, and today it is my distinct pleasure to welcome our guest, Dr. Mia Gormandy-Benjamin. Mia.
Hi.
I just want to jump straight in and ask you what your first memory of Pan is. What is your first, what comes to mind when you think about your first days, hours, weeks involved in steelpan?
Some people over the years have asked me, if I remember learning how to play pan and what that process was. And I always say, I actually don't remember because I started so young. I started when I was 5 years old. So the earliest memory that I have was actually when I was 6 years old. And it's not even a memory about playing pan. I was at this competition, which I don't think I completely understood that at the time. And I remember standing just by myself in this, in a dress or whatever. And I just see my father bolting coming through, this field. And he's running to me and he picks me up and throws me up in the air and says, you won, oh my gosh, you won the competition. And this was a competition. It's my first competition that I ever entered. And I competed against kids that were twice my age and teenagers. So it was a big deal to my parents and a big deal to my father. I think he was just so surprised that I won. And then there I am having no idea what was happening. I know I just played the song that I learned. And that was one of my earliest memories, was being a part of that competition. And my father just being super excited that I won. And then from then on, of course, I entered other competitions, and I have better memories of those things. But this is definitely one of my earliest memories and probably one of the most memorable.
Okay. You talked a lot about your father in that memory. What role did your family play in those early days of, pushing you into this spotlight of being this pan prodigy? What was the role of your family in doing that?
They had a massive role. I mean, now that I have a daughter myself, it's amazing what they were able to do, because it's no easy task to have full-time jobs and raise 3 kids. So they were very, very supportive of me and music. And I actually remember having some other family members who maybe weren't as supportive, like, she should be focusing on her school, on her schoolwork. But my parents saw the passion that I had, and they thought that they should nurture, that talent that they saw in me at the time. So they played a massive role in helping me to balance school with performing, and all these things. And eventually I joined the Trinidad Orchestra when I was 9 years old. So it was definitely my parents picking me up and dropping me here and making sure I did my homework and this and that. I owe them a lot. I owe them everything. Because without them, I wouldn't be here. And I wouldn't be sitting here as a woman in pan, So I really appreciate all that they've done. And it's something that I carry, of course, with me all the time.
You mentioned that you were one of 3 children. How did your brothers deal with you being the star girl? What was the balance of power in the household, given that you were constantly going out and doing this and that and the next? What was the dynamic between you and your siblings?
Well, I am the middle child, and I have 2 brothers. My older brother is actually 14 years older than me, so there's a big gap between the 2 of us. And my younger brother is just 3.5 years younger than me. However, my older brother, he is mentally challenged, so he kind of lives his life in what I like to call, he's always happy, in happy land, because he loves music himself. And he actually really enjoyed when my father and I would practice at home, because he really enjoys music. And sometimes he would try to even play what we were playing on the piano. So I think he really supported that aspect of what was happening. My younger brother also had just as much attention, because he did really well in school. He was also into music. He learned how to play the drum set. He did gymnastics. And from a very young age, my parents realized that he had a really good ability for seeing things a certain way. And then they realized, okay, you're probably going to be a really good engineer. And that he just held on to that idea of engineer and became a civil engineer, and that's what he is today. And he's done so well. So I can't say that, my parents sort of just gave me all the attention, because he also has had a very successful life and, turned out to be a civil engineer, which is what he wanted to do. So yeah, they definitely ensured that their 3 children were fully supported in what we like to do.
Okay. So you grew up in Belmont, and at age 9, you went into the historic, notorious, beloved All Stars. How did you end up in All Stars?
Actually, I don't know why my parents picked All Stars. I think maybe All Stars was their favorite band at the time. I feel like I asked them this many years ago and they told me, but I don't remember now. I think All Stars was their #1 band. They thought it was the best. And I think at the time, I was doing a lot of solo performances and all these things. They thought, okay, this would be a nice added element, in the sort of development of becoming this musician. And yeah, I walked into the Panyard at 9 and there was nobody else my age. There was no youth orchestra at the time. So it was quite the experience, but I really enjoyed it. They made me feel very comfortable. And I even have memories of having to choose what tenor pan to play, because All Stars has a Neville Drew style of tenor. So it doesn't necessarily match the 4th and 5th tenor, which is the tenor that I pretty much grew up playing. So we decided that I'll play the All Stars tenor, so making all these types of decisions and being a part of the band and sort of being the child among the adults, everybody sort of took care of me and watched out for me. So it was a beautiful experience actually growing up there. And that's why I hold the Trinidad All Stars so close to my heart, because it's like they're my family also.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So going into All Stars, I mean, you've been playing since you were 5 years old. How did you make the transition from playing to deciding that this would be your career, your course of study, your life's journey, and your life's path?
That's an excellent question. And it's actually a question that I struggled with, surprisingly enough. But when I was 15 years old, and I was sort of, I think in Form 4, around there, I entered a competition called Hal Jackson Talented Teens Competition. And it was a local leg, which I entered and I came first. Very, very happy about that. And then I went on to the international competition where I was Miss Trinidad and Tobago. It was a talent pageant. I actually think I was maybe a little bit younger, about 14 years old. I came second. And it was like this kind of a disappointment, because I think the whole Trinidad and Tobago content, how we are, proud people, like, oh man, me are going to win this competition, And I came second, and I was fine with coming second, because the person who came first, who was Miss Georgia, was an exceptional singer, right? Anyway, I say all that to say, when Miss Georgia toured Europe, because that was part of the first prize, I was in Trinidad, and I went about my life doing my gigs. And I happened to have to perform at an award ceremony, which happened to have Professor Liam Teague and Dr. Larry Snyder. And at that time, they saw the performance, and they were so pleased with it that they spoke to my father at the time. And that's pretty much how I got my scholarship to attend Northern Illinois University. And I told myself, if I had won Hal Jackson Talented Teens Competition, I would not have been in Trinidad to perform for Professor Teague and Dr. Larry Snyder. And I was able to become a guest artist at University of Akron, which is where Dr. Larry Snyder was a professor, and then, of course, Northern Illinois University. So I the decision almost was made for me, being at that performance and being offered a scholarship before I even did CXE, it was almost an automatic sort of decision. And of course, some years later, I started realizing, wait, everything just seemed to fit. And then I started questioning, wait, is this what I was supposed to do? Because it just seemed like it was just this path that was sort of there. And I of course, went through my own path of trying to figure that out. But I'm very, very happy, that I made the decision that I made, because it's been a very fulfilling life so far.
Yeah. So you got this scholarship at like age 15 and
Yeah.
went off to Northern Illinois University as a very young teenager,
Yeah.
like before most people would start university. And then you just went straight through studying right up until PhD, going through your entire academic career in the US, sort of coming into adulthood
Yeah.
in a place that was not home. What were some of the challenges that you may have faced going through that pretty much on your own?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say that I was very grateful to have Liam Teague and the late Dr. Cliff Alexis there, because they really looked out for me. And I felt very comfortable because they were two Trinidadians living in this very cold place. That was definitely a massive culture shock for me. But, because of their support and because of the support of my family members, not just in Trinidad, but I have family members living in the United States as well. Because of that support, I was able to sort of continue and go through school. There were many, many challenges. I mean, even just to get into a PhD program, for example, I got so many denial letters that I thought, okay, maybe this is not something I should be doing. And I mean, there are classes, of course, that you want to do well at, that you maybe didn't do so well at, or opportunities that you applied for that you didn't get, So there were definitely lots of roadblocks. But, it's just a matter, I guess, of continuing and jumping over the hurdles and going through and ducking under here to just make it. And I remember when I was finishing my first master's at NIU, and I think I already did the second master's at Florida State in ethnomusicology. I just wanted to stop because I told myself, I have been in school my whole life. This is really hard. It's financially difficult. It's emotionally draining. And I just didn't want to continue. And for some reason, every job that I applied to at that point in time, denial. No, we don't have any space for you. And the only opportunity I had was to continue my PhD. And I had a long conversation with my mother, and she was saying, Mia, just continue. You're almost there, you're almost there. And that conversation really helped give me the little bit of drive that I needed to continue. So it's not an easy road, but once you get through it, it's something that makes you stronger for sure.
Yeah. Were there any other personal challenges or, aside from the academic ones, what else were you struggling with at the time?
Yes, I actually had some health scares. And that was due to sort of ignoring my body. When you are doing a master's or a PhD, your whole life is school. Going all day, sleeping 3 hours a night, and just completely ignoring the signs of my body. And my health declined. And eventually I had to go to the doctor. My mom kind of butted in and was like, what is wrong? You need to go to the doctor. Something is wrong with you, And, I get the buff on the phone. And I'm like, all right, fine. I go to the doctor. And I was diagnosed with osteomyelitis, which is a bone degenerating sort of disease. And I was then treated. And the treatment that I was given almost killed me. The treatment was so strong that it completely shut down my whole body. And it was a very scary time in my life because I was living in Tallahassee at the time. It was Christmas time. My doctor was on vacation and everybody went home. So I was sort of in this space by myself. And I had my family members calling me, are you okay? Everything good? And, Mia, if you know me, I'm like, yeah, man, things real good. Don't worry about me, And then one day I pretty much crashed to the floor and couldn't get up. I had to call 911 and, the whole drama. I got to the hospital and that doctor said, it's a good thing you called because this would have been a very different conversation 3 days later. So that was a very scary moment and it was a wake-up call for me. My father actually flew up like in less than 24 hours. He was there, to try and help nurse me back to health. I came to Trinidad actually and fulfilled or continued treatment where it was actually a much better treatment and they understood the difficulties and I was able to get rid of it and I was able to continue my life. And that was a very humbling moment to know that I can't just keep going without taking care of yourself, doing things like eating right, eating on time. If something happens to you, go get it checked, because it could be something that can be life-threatening, and it's something that can kill you. Yeah. So that was definitely a moment that I will never forget. And I will always remember too, because that's when I started talking to my husband again, because we were friends for a very long time, and he heard what happened and he called me. And then, well, now the rest is history. But but yeah, that was definitely a difficult time, and I'm really grateful for the people who were there for me during that time.
That certainly gives you a lot of lessons about work-life balance. What are some of the strategies that you use, to form boundaries between the work that you're doing as assistant professor at UTT, and then you're also in All Stars now as artistic director. And, your husband is also leading the junior orchestra. It's a lot. And you're also a parent. Yes. So where is the balance? Where do you find balance in all of the different roles and responsibilities that you play?
That's excellent. It's an excellent question, because I think it's a very important one, especially given the time that we're in. It's so much easier to do so much more in a shorter space of time because of the internet and all these things, that it's very important to have that balance. And for me, I sort of figured out that balance, actually thanks to my husband, because he's very different to me. I'm the one that's like, work. And he's like, oh, wait, no, I need a break. I need to chill. And I'm like, how are you? And actually, because of him, I learned to have to schedule my breaks. Because actually when we were dating, he would say, all right, so what you doing this week? And I'd be like, oh, Monday I'm going to work, and I'm at this station, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. And then I'll call the whole week. And then he would say, so where's my time? Where do I fit into this? So because of that, I'm like, all right, wait, no, I need to, okay. And then I learned to say, all right, so Friday evenings and Saturdays, I'm not working. And that's kind of how I create that balance. I tell myself, this is the time that I have for me, and everything else gets scheduled, so I also have to schedule a break. So Friday evenings, weekends, I really try not to do any work, and that's the time I really get to spend with my family, with my daughter, who's 1, and she's in this very developmental stage. I don't want to miss anything, all the new words that she's saying, and I get to spend time with my husband, and so during the week it's go. And then, on the weekend it's like, right, this is home time, and I really try to not do as much on the weekend to accommodate that balance. And then also too, we try to go on family vacations, even if it's just at Tobago, so that we can help make sure that we are still connected, as a family.
Yeah. I want to go back to your time at NIU and talk about some of the other things that you were doing aside from your academic work. You were also instrumental in the starting of this virtual steel band project with Yuko Asada. Can you tell me a little bit about what was the thinking behind the project and, how it came to fruition?
One day was looking through the internet, and the virtual choir came up by Eric Whitaker, where he was conducting to silence. And then he did a call for all these vocalists from around the world to sing his composition to his conducting, and they put it together, and it was absolutely amazing. And I thought, why couldn't we have a virtual steel band? Because there are pans all over the world, steel bands all over the world, pianists all over the world. So that's when I picked up the phone and I called Yuko, and, I called some of my other colleagues, and I was like, listen, we need to put together a virtual steel band. And they were like, yeah, sure. And the first one started with Yuko Asada, Abe Breiling, and Scott McConnell, and myself. And we pretty much contacted as many pianists as we could. We did a Kickstarter where we could raise funds, to get this done, to pay for an audio engineer and videographer and all these things. In the first go around, we had just over 100 participants from 9 different countries. And this was premiered in 2015. Here at the International Conference and Panorama. And then in 2017, we premiered the second one. That one had 300 pianists from 11 different countries. And then during the pandemic in 2020, Yuko and I got a call from Tracy Thornton, who is very known for pan rocks. He's like, why can't we try and get 1,000 panists, to come together to do a virtual performance? We're like, why not? And this is with my very pregnant self about to have a baby. Yes, sure. And we were able to get 691 panists from 23 different countries. So we realized that it was something that people were really interested in making that connection with other panists around the world. Even during the virtual steel band, we've heard from panists who say, well, I'm the only panist in my country, and it was really amazing to hear these stories from different people, and learn about pan in different countries. And it's something that we hope to, of course, continue. Maybe the next one will cross 1,000, we'll see.
Yeah. How is transcription connected to the work of projects like the Virtual Steel Band project? Because transcription is certainly a really important part of the work that needs to be done to make music for pan more visible and more available. So could you tell me a little bit about the connection between those two things and how transcription factors into the work that you're doing?
Transcription is so important because if you have a score that is representative of this music that you're hearing, then 100 years from now, that music could be replicated. And, for the virtual steel band, it was important to have those scores because that's how the music was disseminated to people around the world. And we had, of course, the audio to support that score at different tempos, like a very slow tempo, medium tempo, fast tempo. And people were able to learn it even though they couldn't read music. So there were people who learned to play by rote that were still able to learn the music. So we see that the score in this case is very, very important. So in the first virtual steel band, Liam Teague composed the music for us. So that came with a score, and that's what we were able to share. Same with Virtual Steel Band 2, where Mark Loquan composed Pan Kingdom, Amrit Amaru arranged it. So transcription is so important, and for me, it's something that's close to what I'm very much interested in within steel pan communities, and that's why PanNotation, I guess, exists. And PanNotation was a concept that came to be through Mark Loquan, talking about education and the preservation of music and ensuring that our culture and our music is available as well to people around the world. So with PanNotation as a company, we are able to have music scores that are not only available to people around the world, but it's also something that can be used for educational purposes. And it's an opportunity as well for our local arrangers and composers to earn, from the music that they have done, because we have a lot of people interested in music from all over the world, the steel band music, and here is this one place that can happen. Mm-hmm. And then also, as you say, transcription, it's not just the transcription of music, but also the transcription of things like interviews, with our pioneers. And that is also supported on PanNotation through our subscription library, where we have access to academic articles and podcasts and just steel band profiles of different steel bands around the world. So we have a library that we can rely on quality information. And what we were very passionate about, and the team on PanNotation is Mark Loquan, Pat Loquan, myself, and then we have Jamila Reed, Mark Anthony Batiste, and Kadesh Clouden, along with Kavish Sitahal. What we're very passionate about is also all of our profits go to a not-for-profit to help support and sustain the steel pan, its communities, and the people who sort of form the communities. So it's a project that's close to my heart, and I know it's close to the team's heart. And we want to definitely see so many people benefit from something like PanNotation.
Your work at the UTT, teaching the steel pan, what are some of your favorite pieces of music to use as teaching tools? And also connected to that is the whole question of what types of music do we have available for teaching and for learning within the steel band world?
Yeah, so at UTT specifically, we have a steel orchestra filled with panists who come from very strong playing backgrounds. I mean, we have panists from Trinidad, All Stars, Despers, Renegades, Supernovas, you call it, phase 2, right? And this is an opportunity now for them to take their rote learning process and now add the element of reading and music literacy to sort of shape them as musicians. So the music that we choose is very important in order to help facilitate that growth that we would like to see in our students. So for UTT Steel Orchestra, we choose music we try to choose music that's on the difficult side, that's going to challenge them. And we also really don't want them to teach each other, because we see them like, nope, look at the score, because they're so good at rote learning that we want them to be able to focus on music literacy as well. So we do panorama arrangements sometimes where we can go through and analyze what different arrangers have done. We do classical music, and right now we're working on The Planets by Gustav Holst, all 7 movements that we're going to perform next year. Fingers crossed, with New York University. So it's something that's definitely challenging. Different styles of music that's fast, music that's slow, music that's loud, music that's soft. And it's all about musicality and creating an emotion for the audience to be able to appreciate. So our music is definitely dependent on our students' abilities, and we want to see them grow. So that's kind of how we choose the music. It's for their development, for sure.
Okay. So I want to go back to your development as a pianist and a teacher. You made a decision at some point in your life, because you were really a well-known player, you're an excellent player. You made a decision at some point in your life to move away from the playing spotlight and into the teaching. What prompted that decision, and do you miss being a professional pianist?
Oh, yes. I mean, I don't think it was a decision that I just purposely made and said, I'm just going to stop performing, but I gradually sort of got there, I guess, through pursuing higher education. Because, I mean, once you sort of go on and you do your PhD and all these things, the expectation is that you're teaching at a university. But I miss performing. I do. But I feel as though my work can be more beneficial in other areas, because there's so many great performers out there. I mean, I could just think of a few right now, and they're really dominating the global landscape for pan and performance. And then I see some other areas where we kind of need some assistance, right? Like the transcription and the preservation, of our culture. So that's like work that I'm doing through PanNotation, and the conducting. Even though I didn't necessarily aim to be a conductor, it's sort of one of those roles that was, something that I was able to step into. So I think naturally I ended up going into the direction that I thought maybe needed a little more attention, here in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's kind of how I ended up moving off of the performance path. But it's okay, because I feel as though we do have so many fantastic performers that are representing the steel pan really well. And I hope that the work that I'm doing can also show that there is that type of support for panists and for the steel band cultures and communities around the world.
Coming back to Trinidad after doing your PhD, what was your re-entry into certain spaces? So say, for example, going back into All Stars, coming back to Trinidad and entering into an academic space that, you people would not necessarily have known you as being part of for the past 10 years or so. What were some of the things you observed about being back in Trinidad, and your experiences of those special elements of being here?
Well, I think, as you said, most people, I think, recognize me in the pan world as this child that's playing. It's like, oh, look at the little girl behind the pan. And because I sort of disappeared for a while and came back, they thought I was still the little girl behind the pan. not realizing that I grew up into this adult, and have pursued, education. So coming back, it was sort of a challenge to try and change, I think, a little bit the image of how people saw me, and that sort of came with just negotiating for different opportunities that would have come my way, just having certain conversations, people thinking, oh, she's just a kid. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm actually in my mid-20s or something, navigating that sort of perception. But eventually, I think people realize, oh, wait, no, she's not this little girl again. And I'm an adult and capable of my own decisions. Not only am I capable of my own decisions, but I also went and I studied, and I'm bringing back all of these things that I've learned. So it was sort of a challenge at first, but I was able to sort of settle into being here and into being at UTT and into being at Trinidad All Stars.
To go back to your PhD, your research, which was about pan in Japan, what motivated you to pursue that as a thesis? And what was your experience like going to Japan and seeing the impact of steelpan in that space?
Actually, when I needed to choose a topic, I was very much interested in going all over the world. I wanted to do pan in South Africa and compare pan in South Africa with steel pans in Australia and this. And I had like all these high hopes. And my advisor, Dr. Michael Bacon at Florida State, said, oh, so how are you going to fund all of that? It's like, oh, I got snapped back right into reality. And you realize, oh, wait, I can't really do all of these things. But I picked Japan specifically of all of the countries because I actually was introduced to Japanese culture through Yuko Asada. And when we were at Northern Illinois University, she'd take me to sushi places and teach me about Japanese culture. And that's kind of how I picked Japan, because of her love for her country. And I saw that love and really fell in love with Japanese culture myself. So I knew that there was a steel band community there, and then also noticed that there were so many Japanese pianists that would come to Trinidad. So that all of that sort of sparked my interest in doing my research over there. And it was a fantastic experience. It blew my mind, because it's so different, and understanding how people and culture can definitely change in this nice sort of new way, your own culture, So for me, going over there and understanding how they see the pan and how they perform and being a part of their performance, I could hardly keep up. And I've been performing for so long. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't keep up with them, because they just, the energy that they sort of bring is on a completely different level. And I was really happy to have the opportunity to be a part, just a little bit, of their performances, of their culture. And I was also able to see it from different ways, because I was able to be an observer, but then also a participant. And then there was a new element too, because they knew I was from Trinidad. So then they would ask me questions. I'm like, no, this is research about you, not me, And of course, I would share as much as I could. So yeah, it was a very fulfilling experience, and I can't wait to go back.
You've been recently announced as artistic director of All Stars. Tell me what that means for you to, be given that role, that title, and that responsibility.
That word responsibility is key, because it is sort of a massive responsibility. Well, for me, I was always sort of part of All Stars. As long as I can remember, All Stars, my family, I can recognize a lot of people in All Stars, people who were there before, people who are here now. My role has sort of slowly changed over the years, from player to, a conductor at some point, a transcriber, sort of an arranger in a way. And then all of a sudden, boom, artistic director for a short period, because I was artistic director for the Classical Jewels concert that took place in 2019, and then now official artistic director. So there was this sort of gradual change for me in my roles at Trinidad All Stars. And what I do love about our organization is that we tend to sort of have this, okay, you're in the family, we're going to help you, grow, and then you're also going to continue being a part of, So it's like one big family. So becoming artistic director, it almost seemed as though All Stars was sort of helping me prepare in a way, because when I think about all the different things that I did with All Stars, I came back as a guest for some other classical Jews concerts as soloist. It's almost as if they were preparing me to be part of all these different roles, and then boom, all of it, and then here comes artistic director. And I think for me, it just seemed sort of like a natural sort of position, because I was sort of already doing some of the roles unofficially. And I don't think it hit me that this was something that was part of a legacy, because, we're talking about Trinidad All-Stars Steel Orchestra, who just celebrated just a few years ago, 85 years. We're about 87 years now. And to be part of this legacy, it didn't hit me. I signed, and he's like, oh, yeah, you're the artistic director. Oh, great. And I go home, and I'm like planning, and I'm continuing with my work. And then and then Trinidad All-Stars put out a public post about the position, and that I took on the position. And that is when it hit me, because the amount of calls and social media posts, and I couldn't even keep up with all of them, I realized, oh my goodness, this is actually a massive responsibility, because now everybody's looking to me and say, all right, so you're the artistic director, great, we can't wait to see what you're going to do, So, but for me, I do have my vision, and I have my clear vision of what sort of needs to happen, and all of these things. So I feel very confident in the position, but I think, it's just that idea of, oh my gosh, this is a band that has been around for so long, and to be given this opportunity, I feel very blessed and very fortunate to be part of Trinidad All-Stars in that way, and ready to sort of take on the responsibility, because I know I will get the support, from the orchestra, as I have always gotten since I was 9 years old.
Can you speak to some of the women in the Panyard? So not necessarily people who are in leadership positions, but the women who make All Stars into the force that it is.
I am so happy you mentioned that, because I feel as though these women are always looked to, we look over them, and we think, okay, well, they're already in the Panyard and this. But if these women didn't exist within the Panyard, we won't have a successful steel orchestra. As we're talking about women in Pan, I think everybody's mind goes straight to the Pianist, or the women Pianists. But there are women in Pan who don't play Pan. And they help support and give this sort of groundwork for the steel orchestras, for us to survive, and just thinking about their contributions over the years. And they go sort of for a long period, and nobody really tells them anything. You kind of take them for granted, like, oh yeah, thanks, so-and-so, thanks, all right, great. But they really deserve awards. We wouldn't survive without them. I'm just thinking, I'm going to call one name in particular who, if it wasn't for this person in Trinidad All-Stars, I don't know how we would manage, and that's Miss Jackie McKell. She sort of keeps everything sorted and organized, and she knows everybody, and she picks up the phone and she calls you and makes sure that you understand what's supposed to happen, and she doesn't necessarily play, and I don't know if she ever played, but it's those types of roles that keep us going, and we need to be very grateful for people like her and the other people who are in similar positions as she has been. And I'm very happy to use this platform to be able to give them a little bit of credit, because they deserve lots.
And when you think about some of the women in Pan who would have come before you, who would have been a source of inspiration or motivation, who are some of the people who come to mind for you?
Yeah, well, one person that come to mind that I sort of took for granted, I have to admit, as a child, was Dr. Merle Albino Di Cotto. I was part of her academy, And I learned to, I learned music formally. I did all my pan grades through her, music theory, ABRSM. It's like, oh, Missy Koto, Miss Koto. All right, cool. And you move on, that's a teacher, And it's not until I, of course, grew older and started studying pan, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the contributions that people like Dr. Merle Albino Dikoto has done, and the path that she has paved for women to come after her is so important. And I wonder if I could sit here in my positions without someone like Dr. Merle Albino Dikoto. And then there were also other women in my life that were very vital as well to my development. And those women like Sherry Ann Saunders, she was my very first pan teacher, Miss Odessa Vincent Brown, Mrs. Patrice Neves, Miss Michelle Amoroso, and Natasha Joseph. And the list sort of goes on. And these women definitely showed me that I could have taken pretty much any direction that I wanted to, because they were always there and they supported that development, and they supported my passion for pan.
Yeah. Okay. What about pan do you love? What is it about pan that inspires the passion and the obsessiveness that the single-minded focus that women like you have demonstrated from age 5?
Man, that's a tough question. What is it about the pan? For me, what I have learned to love is the pan's ability to evoke emotion. Just sort of being on the stage side, for example, with All Stars. And as soon as da-da-da-da-dum, ba-dum-bum-bum, ba-da-da, as soon as Woman at the Bass start, it's just like this scream, it was just screaming.
I myself have bawled several times coming home from various travels and hearing All Stars play.
Yeah. I'm just like, but me just playing these notes as part of an orchestra evokes that type of because for me, I'm like, yeah, I'm just playing and enjoying it. But to see people in tears and crying on the floor, and it's just, to me, it's just amazing. And being able to use an instrument that is also ours, it's something that was born in Trinidad and Tobago. And because of the time that I've spent so much time, 10 years outside of Trinidad and Tobago, I have sort of grown an appreciation for our culture and our music, not just pan. Anything that's ours. And I think the pan so beautifully represents our people. It represents the history that we have gone through. Because when you think about the history of steel pan and who had to die just to make this instrument legit, and you think about the colonialism and how it sort of was born in this sort of oppression because of the banning of the African drums and because of the taboo. Just when you think about it, to think of an instrument like the steel pan, to be a part of that, and then to see that the emotion it evokes, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but globally, and then to be from the country that it was born from, I'm obsessed.
How could you not be?
How could I not be? And I'm barely even talking about the music. I'm just talking about the sort of spirituality of the instrument that it carries, And then we add the music, which is sweet, That weight of our history that this instrument carries, I think, is why I'm so obsessed with it. And then the music just represents that so beautifully. And I think people may be feeling that, when they hear da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da, Woman and the Bass and all these other beautiful arrangements that also came from pioneers that came before us. So yeah, I would say that's probably why I'm like really into Pan.
What does a better tomorrow for Pan look like for you?
An opportunity for everybody to be able to bask in this beautiful instrument that we have. I mean, I'm just thinking about where we've sort of come from, right? So Pan historically has been very male dominated. And now, okay, women are being involved and women have been involved for a long time, as we've known. But now a better tomorrow means inclusivity. It means that we should pay a lot of attention to things that we haven't really been paying attention to before. So for example, things like preservation, music literacy, training, to sort of promote the sustainability of it, to make sure it doesn't just die away, and a better tomorrow also means anybody from anywhere can come openly in a safe space and play the pan. And by that, I mean, I feel as though we're still, as a society, we could be a little bit judgmental when it comes to maybe ethnicities. Like, oh gosh, if you're not of Afro descent, hey, look how she could play that pan, And it's like, yeah, and so why couldn't anybody of any color play? But then we have to take an extra step to make sure that no matter your gender, no matter your race, no matter your sexual orientation, no matter your age, no matter what experiences you've had in the past, you should be able to freely, play steel pan. You should be able to have training, proper training in pan. And I want to see pan on a global scale, just as big as Bob Marley and Michael Jackson. And, so for me, a better tomorrow means that we are taking on the history of the instrument, and we are sort of bringing it into the new age, so that everybody now can enjoy this instrument, and that we can leave it to those who come after us to even carry it further. So there's so many different elements that I think a better tomorrow would be, but I would want to focus, at least for me, on that element of preservation, inclusivity, and sort of creating opportunities for people around the world to continue to collaborate.
How do you see your work, feeding into this idea of creating a better tomorrow?
Well, so the virtual steel band, was something that came up in 2015 before the pandemic, and now everybody's having virtual performances. So I sort of see the work that I'm doing, hopefully, as a way to contribute to that better tomorrow through the virtual steel band project, through PanNotation, with the preservation of music, ensuring that everybody can benefit from the work that they've done. Just my work here at UTT as well, ensuring that there's a space for young pianists to be formally trained in music. My work at Trinidad All-Stars, ensuring that we can represent Trinidad and Tobago at the highest level, right? And bring that attention, to this beautiful instrument that we have. So I feel like I'm very passionate about contributing in those ways to ensure that our tomorrow is a better place, and leaving this situation in an even better position that we've met it, so that those who come after us can then take it from there and carry it in an even better place. So hopefully that's my hope, is that the work that I'm doing is sort of contributing to that overall process and development of the steel pan.
Dr. Mia Gormandy-Benjamin, thank you so much for sharing your stories and adventures of your life as a woman in pan.
Thank you so much for having me.